If you feel like stress is taking you over, or you're wanting to enter into the summer really working on some habits such as stress management, which we're going to talk about today, this episode is for you. I'm joined by Jamie Blackburn, who wears many hats in her life. She's a science teacher, outdoor educator, school counselor, ice cream scooper, oyster shucker, but the job she loves most right now is helping overwhelmed women find time for self-care so they prevent burnout and don't miss out on life's greatest adventures. And so she has an amazing program and just format and concept that she uses called the Inner Map Project, which is based on the belief of mindfulness, physical activity, and mental presence to really help women get connected with their true nature, but also manage that stress so they don't burn out. So I'm excited to have her on the podcast today with us to learn just how to manage stress to be better people and better human beings and really take care of ourselves. And so as we enter into the summer, I think it's a really great time where things are a little less stressful for most of us. Maybe not completely true for everyone, but you can practice a little bit more of the healthy habits. So when the fall enters again, a new busier season, you have those habits under your belt. And one of those amazing habits you can practice is learning how to manage your stress well. So tune into this episode, check out all the resources she mentions, but I wanted to make sure you knew that starting next Monday, I'm going to be hosting a free 3-day food and body reset where we're going to go through how to set goals this summer, where we're going to figure out how to eat well this summer, how to practice healthy habits such as stress management, and then how to reflect and celebrate your progress along the way. So all you need to do to enter this challenge is purchase my food journal and habits tracker that we're going to use and set up for you throughout the challenge, which is $20 off right now. So it's only $27. So you're going to want to go to madewell345.com/habits tracker or the show notes. Grab the tracker, then I'm going to be sending you emails on when I'm going to go live throughout the 3 days, as well as how to go about using your tracker. So grab the tracker, join us while the tracker is only $20 off, and you can do this live experience with us to prepare for your healthiest summer yet. All right, enjoy the episode, and I'll talk to you later. You're listening to the More Than Your Weight podcast, and I am your host, Brianna Wilkerson. You know, for over half my life, I had to really pay attention to my relationship with food, my body, and myself. As a young girl, I started to find my worth in my weight and my work, and started to define my beauty and my body and my value through how I looked and how other people saw me. That led to disordered ways of eating, of exercising, and really just a poor relationship with my body and myself. And then when I started to finally see that my worth was not in my weight, it was not in how I looked, and it was not in what people thought of me, that's when I found breakthrough and freedom. And ever since, it's been my mission to help other women do the same. I am on a mission to see other women find peace with food, feel confident in their bodies again, and develop a healthy lifestyle that's more than about what they weigh. Now, weight loss is not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think when we are approaching it from a place of value or a place of trying to find our worth in it, that's when it can really trip us up. So I want you to find peace with food, to find your version of food freedom, your version of body confidence and love, and a healthy lifestyle that is about so much more than what the scale says. So this podcast is going to help you do that. You're going to find solo episodes, guest interviews, all designed to really speak from the heart, give you some new ways of thinking and acting so that you can start to also believe and walk in the truth that you are more than your weight. And from time to time, I'll throw in an essential oils episode because I'm also a lover of essential oils. So I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so honored to be a part of this journey with you. So please, before you get into the interview or the podcast or leave, I want to make sure you do a couple things. Make sure you join my free Facebook group, the More Than Your Weight Facebook community. This is a women's community designed to support you in really unpacking these episodes. I also host free trainings, free challenges to really kind of support you more in this journey. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, rate and review, but also subscribe to my weekly newsletter so you'll never miss a podcast episode. You can find all the links for that in the show notes. So make sure after you listen that you go do those things. Okay? So excited for this episode and so excited to journey with you. All right, enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have with me Jamie Blackburn to talk all about how to manage your stress well. We were just talking about how it's May and it's mental health month, and mental wellness is something that's very important to me. And you guys know I talk a lot about that. So I wanted someone to talk. She's actually going to bring it from a very unique perspective as well, but talk a little bit about stress management and its effect on your body and your mind. So thanks so much for joining us, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to connect with your community and nerd out a little bit. I'm a former science teacher, and we can get in more into that, but I love to nerd out about science with people. So this is going to
Yes.
be super fun.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, and what led you kind of to the health and wellness world and this unique way that you do it. And tell us about that too.
Yeah, well, so I've been a yoga teacher since 2007, and a friend of mine dragged me to a yoga class in about like 2001, I think. She was like, "You have to come do this yoga class with me," and it was a hot, like Bikram style, 100 and something degrees in the room, and I was like, "This is torture. Like, what are we doing here?" But over the years, like I fell in love with it and became a yoga teacher. But my quote unquote real job had always been in education. So in 2005, I started teaching. I was a science teacher. I taught chemistry, and I taught earth science. And I had also done some outdoor education in the summers where I was leading kids on trips all over Colorado and even up to like Yellowstone and the Pacific Northwest. And as I was teaching, I started having kids come to me with information that I didn't really know how to help them with. And one girl in particular came to me, and she was a junior in high school, and she was like, "Miss Blackburn, I'm pregnant and I haven't told my mom yet." And I was like, "Well, I can't have this information. I don't know what to do with this information. We got to talk to your mom." So I helped her process how to do that and had a conversation with her. But that actually sparked me to decide to go back and get my school counseling degree. And so I went back and I became a school counselor, and I did that I wasn't actually planning on becoming a school counselor. I just thought that I would go back and get the degree so I could help my students better. But as I was getting my master's, I really loved working one-on-one with students. And so I went into school counseling and did that for about 6 years. And over that time, I kept getting more and more and more students coming to me with anxiety. And because I had this mental health background, and because I had a science background, and I knew all of these things were interrelated, I knew that our diet and exercise and how we take care of ourselves and all these things were kind of interrelated. And I decided to leave public education and do more preventative work. And I originally thought I was going to be working with teenagers, but I kept getting yoga students coming to me, like people my age. I'm in my 40s. I kept getting, women in their 30s, 40s, 50s that would stay and chat with me after class, after my yoga classes. And they were like, "I want to work with you. I'm stressed out all the time. I'm burned out for my job. I'm traveling like, 3 weeks out of the month, and I never see my kids." And obviously, this was pre COVID. Now we have a different set of stuff where we're probably with our kids more than we want to be. Um, but all and so it is just kind of evolved over the years, where now I work with women, primarily with women. I do work with some men, but primarily with women, and help them learn how to take care of themselves. So I do a lot with like finding time in your day for self-care. I do a lot of education on how the brain and the body are connected and how that impacts our mood and our weight and our ability to cope with stress and all these things. And so I kind of cater what I do depending on what's going on with my client at that time. And then I do a lot like, just fun like little workshops and stuff like that for everybody. And so it's transformed over the years. I definitely just kind of let my intuition and let what people were asking me for, let that guide me in this crazy business world that I've started over the past couple of years.
That's amazing. I love, I think most entrepreneurs I talk to as well, it's like we kind of fall into what we're doing. I mean, like I'm an accountant CPA trained. Like I didn't ever think I was going to be a health and wellness coach, right? But you fall into it for different reasons, sometimes personal, sometimes the things we see, as you were kind of talking about, like a lot of what people around you, kids, women, men, struggling with stress management. But So I would love to hear, I mean, well, self-care, and then you kind of hone in on the stress management piece as well. So tell me a little bit, as we start getting into this topic around stress management, what has your life been like with stress management? You feel like you've always managed it really well? Because there are people out there who manage stress really well, right? But yeah, what's your experience been like with stress and how you managed it?
Oh my gosh, I did not manage stress well for a very long time. So, and I'm pretty open about this. I actually had several miscarriages back in 2017. I had two that year, and I had had one prior. And, you know, it was at that point. So I was working in the schools, which is not an easy job. I had a 3-year-old at home, which if you've ever had a three-nager, you know that that can be stressful too.
I've never heard of that way. Three-nager. That's amazing.
Three-nager. Oh yeah, they give you the teenage attitude at 3.
Right.
Um, but and so I was not taking care of
Mm-hmm.
myself, and I do think that contributed to my physical health. And I think that contributed, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that contributed to why I had miscarriages. But I definitely think that stress played a part. And after the second one, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something for myself in 2018. I was just not super happy in my job, didn't feel very fulfilled, was just I was burnt out, honestly, is what it
Mm-hmm.
was. I was feeling burnt out and I needed to do something. And I decided to go back and get my 500-hour yoga teacher certification at that point. So in yoga, there's two different certifications. There's like the 200-hour, which is like you can get that and then you can teach yoga. And then there's kind of, I jokingly call it like the master's degree of yoga, but you go and you can get a 500-hour certification. So it's 300 additional hours. And the way that my program worked is that was all of 2018. And it was once a month. We had like a whole weekend that we would spend together every like one weekend per month for the entire year. And it was over that year that the idea to leave my job in education and pursue something that lit me up a little bit more, that was where that came to be. I had no idea how hard it was going to be an entrepreneur. And but I will say that I love what I do. I'm super passionate about it. I feel very fulfilled and a lot more lit up than I did when I was in education. Um, and yeah, but I did not take care of my stress for a very long time, and it had a pretty big impact on my health, on my own physical health. And it's taken me, I mean, there's times now where I'm like, oh, I haven't done my meditation in 3 days. I haven't, I haven't taken my dog for a walk all week. And she's like staring at me and giving me, the sad eyes. So it's always a work in progress. There is no such thing, even though this is something that I do every single day and it's something that I preach, it's still a practice. It is not a perfect. And it's like we talk about in yoga. It's called a yoga practice for a reason. I think it's called a self-care practice for a reason, because it's just something that we are constantly having to do and constantly having to work on throughout our lives. But I'm going to be 43 in a couple weeks, and it's I think it's taken me to this point to really learn how to weave these practices into my day and to not beat myself up if it's like, oh, I have 15 minutes. I'm going to do, a couple sun salutations, or I'm going to go take my dog for a walk around the block. It doesn't have to be an hour-long yoga class, or it doesn't have to be, getting out and going for a run or spending like a whole day in the mountains. It can be simple things. And that's I think what is really I've learned and evolved over the years is I used to be this black and white all or nothing thinker, where it was like I'm either going to go like work out really hard or I'm not going to do anything. And now I'm a lot more gentle with myself, which also has helped my own stress levels, because I don't stress about working out anymore. I don't stress about my own self-care.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, and sorry for your losses, because I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah, there's nothing like that, but I do think you've come out on the other side just really coming to a place of really wanting to serve women. And I think sometimes our pain can lead us in that. And, you're just so passionate about it. And I could see how your science education, even your service to kids, has really led you to kind of want to serve the world in a really big way through this area. And you're right, being an entrepreneur is some tough booty stuff. Like and it's stressful. Like, so we have to even, as health and wellness coaches, we're like, oh, manage your stress. And we're like over here being like, okay, I need to manage my stress. But I love what you said, that it's really like more than nothing. Just we are caught in this cycle of like, either I do all or I do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how you talked about the word gentle, like being more gentle. I often hear graceful with yourself, but grace has to do with you when you kind of get something you don't deserve, and something, just being like, wow, that's really gracious of you. But I think
Mm-hmm.
gentle is like, I'm just going to be very loving and caring to myself and not expect myself to be perfect, and just do a little bit at a time. And so I love how you even are living that out. Like we all have to apply that. And I love what you said. It's a practice. It's not,
Yes.
I've arrived. I'm constantly doing, right? Just like how a athlete needs to practice daily to get better. We need to practice this self-care stuff. So tell us, let's get into it then, right? So stress, like what does it do in our bodies, in our minds, and how does that then, what's going on, but then what are some of the symptoms of that? Because I think often we're trying to treat the symptom like, oh, I don't, I don't have a lot of energy. Well, what's going on in your body that's causing the stress? And then, okay, what's causing the stress, right? Going backwards. So tell us a little bit, what happens in the body when we're stressed?
Yeah. So the first thing, so one of the things that happens is we have stressors all the time, and we have positive, and so it's called eustress and distress. Anytime stress basically is just anything that happens to our body that causes our body to have to up its level of energy or whatever. So you can think about, like, if you go to the gym and you lift a dumbbell, you're putting stress on your muscles. Well, that doesn't necessarily translate to emotional stress, right? We always think of stress as being like this bad thing, but there are also things, times like getting married, having a baby, like all of these things can, they change our environment, they put new demands on our body, both physically and emotionally, but they're not necessarily bad things. It's just learning how to adapt to that change. Then there are things that can be really hard, like the loss of a job or getting a divorce, losing a parent. Those things would fall more in the distress category. But all of these things can, if we don't process whatever emotions we're feeling, and we don't let our body feel what we're feeling. Then I had a yoga teacher who used to say that if you don't get the emotions in motion, then the issues get stuck in the tissues. And if you think about this, right, like we get tightness in our shoulders, tightness in our back, tightness in our hips. Those are some of the physical things that we may feel from stress. But when our body goes into a stress response, when we are presented with something challenging and our body goes into a stress response, sometimes our body will go into fight or flight, which we may have heard of before. And that creates this whole cascade of hormones in the brain. It releases cortisol, it can release adrenaline. Over time, if you're in a constant low level stress, you can get adrenal fatigue. You can get like changes to, because our stress response is also related to our appetite. It's related to our heart and our lungs, because if you go into fight or flight, your body is literally trying to fight off the saber-toothed tiger, whatever it is that it thinks is a saber-toothed tiger. It could be a work email that triggers that response. It could be traffic. So your body is trying to fight that off, and you're trying to get more energy. So your heart rate increases, your respiratory rate increases, your eyes dilate, and your body shuts off any non-essential functions. So things like reproduction, which is why a lot of women may not feel so excited to get sexy with their spouse or their partner. It also can shut down our digestion, because your body is not really worried about digesting food. It's using all of its energy for quick food. And a lot of times that means that we will be craving sugar as well, because our body wants that quick sugar high to run away or fight off the saber-toothed tiger. And the other thing that happens is rational thought goes down. So our body does not care what X plus Y equals if we are getting ready to fight off a threat. So all of these things happen. We can't think creatively. We can't come up with new ideas. We can't think of new ways to cope when we are in a stress response. So all of these things start to happen. And for most of us, we're flexing that stress muscle. We're flexing that neural pathway all day long in our body. And so what I really like to teach women to do is, how do you flex your calming muscle? How do you get yourself into more of what's called the rest and digest system, which is your parasympathetic nervous system? So how do you get into that and start to lower your blood pressure, lower your breathing, get back into the point where you can digest your food, where you can sleep well, where you're not having insomnia, all these different things. So that's really, and I just gave you like a huge long-winded answer. I'm not even sure what the original question was, because I just gave it, there was so
It
much
was good.
information there. But so that's basically what's happening in the body when we have a stress response. There's all these other things that happen.
Yeah. And I love, oh my goodness, you know, I think I've talked, or other speakers have talked about fight or flight and parasympathetic, sympathetic, but I love how you talked about flexing your calm muscle.
Yes.
You know, we don't think about that. And even think of, you know, why I feel like a lot more women or even men are drawn to yoga is because it flexes that. I mean, it flexes your real muscles too, let's be honest, but it's just, it gets you to that parasympathetic state really well. And so tell us a little bit, some tips, some simple ways that we can start to flex our calming muscle.
Well, so one thing I want to say about yoga, and this gets to the flexing your calming muscle. I think a huge reason that yoga is so much more beneficial. Maybe it's not more beneficial, but you know, a lot of people think about it as like exercise that is specifically for calming down and de-stressing. But I think a huge part of the reason for that is because in most yoga classes, we are really controlling and connecting and slowing down the breath.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
Yep. And that is the number one thing that I think we need to do. There's a great book by James Nestor called Breath that's been kind of popping up all over the place on social media and stuff.
Yes.
Have you seen it? Yeah.
Yeah, I started it and then I didn't finish it in the library, got it back, but I'm going to get it again soon.
It's amazing. It's such a great book. But he talks in there about how, I mean, this is the number one reason, the number one way to tap into our nervous system. So if you think about all the things I talked about with the stress response, our heart rate goes up, our digestion slows down, our breathing rate increases, our blood pressure increases, rational thought. Like, we don't have control over I don't have control over how fast my heart is beating. I don't have control over whether or not my stomach is digesting, but I can control my breath. So this is the number one thing that I tell people. I'm like, if you do nothing else in your day, take two different, you know, if you have, you know, I like to set an alarm throughout my day. And I will, when the alarm goes off, I will shut it off. I'll stop whatever I'm doing, and I will take 10 or 15 or 20 breaths, different kinds of breaths. And there's some that are more beneficial. I'll walk you through my favorite here in just a second. But I love breathing. I mean, I think that's so important. So if that's the only thing that you can do throughout your day is to set an alarm at 10 and 2 every single day, or whenever, you know, whatever your work schedule allows, and do 10 deep breaths, close your eyes, feel your body, slow down your breath, slow down your heart rate. That's the best thing that you can do. So my favorite breath is alternate nostril breathing. This is the thing that I like about this, is that you're breathing in and out of either side of your nose, and which is why it's called alternate nostril breathing. And I'll kind of coach you as best I can, coach
I
you
have
through it.
never heard of this one. I'm so
Oh,
excited.
this is so good. This is one of my favorite yoga ones.
Okay,
So
great.
So, but the thing that is so great about this for stress or anxiety is that there is a part of your brain called the amygdala. And that's the part of the brain that kind of looks around, and it connects to past memories and all, like, whatever your worldview is. And it looks around at your surroundings and says, am I in danger or am I not in danger? And And so the amygdala is basically these two bundles of nerves that are about the size of almonds, and there's one on either hemisphere of the brain. So when we do alternate nostril breathing, it helps to start balancing out the hemispheres of the brain. There was actually a part in that book, Breath, where they talked about, they had people breathe out of the left side of their nose, like close their right nostril and breathe out of the left side of their nose. And it reduced schizophrenia symptoms by like, I don't know how much, I don't remember the statistic, but it reduced the symptoms, like the, people who had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, it reduced their symptoms by a lot, by a considerable amount, just by breathing out of the left side of their nose for however long. I'd have to go back and look in the book, but it's fascinating. So for alternate nostril breathing, you take your pointer finger and your middle finger. I do this with my right hand because I'm right-handed. So I'm going to guide you through it using your right hand. You take your pointer finger and middle finger and bring them to your palm so that your thumb and your ring finger are kind of sticking up. And then you're going to close your left nostril with your ring finger, and you exhale out the right nostril. And then you're going to inhale through the right nostril. And then you use your thumb and your ring finger to squeeze both nostrils. So you pause at the top of the inhale for just a moment. And then you'll exhale, you release the ring finger. So the left nostril releases, release and exhale out the left nostril. Breathe back in the left nostril. Again, close off both nostrils just for a slight pause at the top. And then release the thumb so that you can exhale out the right. So again, it's breathing in through the right, a pause at the top where you close both sides, exhale out the left, inhale left, pause up at the top, and exhale out the right. And I should have warned you all before this, if you're doing this at home while you're listening to this, that I should have warned you.
No, I love it. Just go in.
Might need to have some Kleenex nearby because sometimes it gets a little snotty.
I know, depending on what's in your nose.
Totally. So that's one of my favorites. And one full round. So the inhale through the right, exhale left, inhale left, and exhale right. That is considered one full breath. So, yeah.
I love that. And you're right. I mean, even, thinking about that book too, and I was listening to it and just the experiment he did on himself. And I just was like, who knew the power of breath? I mean, the breath literally gives us life. So I think often we're like, okay, if I'm breathing, great, I'm living, but just because you're sort of breathing doesn't mean you're really living to your, like, it's almost like you're not living to your full capacity or your full potentials. And so tapping into that breath can even do the same thing for our health and our bodies, just living to that full potential and allowing our bodies to live to that full potential too. So that is so good. So breathing, that's like, I think, honestly, I feel like that tip, it sounds so simple, but even you just leading me through that, I'm just like, whew, all right, what's next? You know what I mean? Like, but I'm like, no, we got to sit and breathe. And I think it's hard for us women though, because we're always doing things, or we feel, or even when we rest, it's really hard to tap into that, that inner state. And I know you talk a lot about mindfulness and a good mental practice because there's just so much going on. And so sometimes I think like even just pausing to breathe, it can just release things, and then you can process, process what's going on. So I love
Well, it's funny that you say that, because as we were talking, I was like, one of the other things that popped in my head is learning how to say no. We as women, and it goes back to what you just said, like we have a hard time resting. We're going all the time. And I think it's because we feel like we have to say yes to everything that comes our way. And I'm such, like, I have to, it's taken me, I joke that I'm a recovering perfectionist and a recovering people pleaser. And I think it's taken me years to learn how to say no to things that I don't really want to do. So another practice that I really try to do is that if someone asks me to do something, I will pause. First of all, I learned to ask for time. Can I think about that? Let me get back to you in 24 hours, and give yourself time. I mean, if it's something simple, like, hey, do you want me to get you a cup of coffee at the coffee shop? Absolutely. Then yes, please. But if it's something where it's like a work project that, they're asking you to be part of, or if it's, oh my gosh, will you bake all the cupcakes for, the birthday party that's coming up, or whatever that is. Take a moment and just say, hey, can I get back to you in 24 hours? I need to look at my schedule, whatever.
Yeah.
And then take a moment and see if it's a whole body yes. I
Mm.
think our initial reaction is just to go, sure, I can totally do that. And then we go after the fact, we're like, oh crap, why did I say yes to that? I don't want to do that. So learning how to say no, or learning even just to ask for time to think
Mm-hmm.
about things, I think is so huge. And then you can sit there because in your gut whether or not you want to do something. Your
Right.
intuition will tell you. And I mean, I can't even tell you, I'm sure you've had this happen to you as well, where you've said yes. And then afterwards, you notice that you have this like pit in your stomach. Like you actually have like a visceral body reaction to like the dread almost of having to do whatever you just said yes to.
Mm.
And so now I've learned, like, if I feel that feeling, I say no, because it's
Mm.
not aligned with whatever it is that I really need to be putting on my plate. And I think that's been such a huge stress reliever for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Just tapping into your intuition and just basically giving yourself time. Like,
Hmm.
just because someone says, does this work for you at this time? Or even like scheduling things. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I might have that space open on my calendar, but how am I going to feel with back to back calls? Or how am I going to feel with this thing in my day? Like, so sometimes it's recognizing too that when you're saying yes to something else, you're saying no to something else. And so when you're saying yes, I can help you out and bake all those cupcakes, what are you saying no to? And are you going to like feel some sort of regret over that too? So that's such a great tip. Well, those are two great ones, breathing and saying no. Any other tips to help us as women manage our stress better?
Well, I am a huge outdoor lover. Anybody who looks at my Instagram account, you'll see that we take full advantage of all the amazing outdoor activities that we have here in Colorado. And so I am a huge proponent of getting outside every single day. And we know that vitamin D is good for us. One of my friends who's a functional medicine doctor says that you have to be outside like in a bikini for an hour to really get the amount of vitamin D that we need. So supplementing with vitamin D is always good because most of us don't have an hour to spend outside. And if we do, we're putting sunscreen on so we don't get skin cancer. But there's something about being outside that immediately drops me into feeling calmer. And a lot of what I coach my clients through is like, I'll have them go outside and do nature meditations, nature mindfulness practices. One of my favorites that I do with my daughter, which is really great, and this actually helps to kick you out of your fight or flight response and into the frontal lobe and more into the rational thinking as well. So you're kind of getting a double benefit. You're actually getting a triple benefit because you're moving. But there's a thing that I like to do called the rainbow walk. And as you're walking, you can do this around your neighborhood, you can do it around a trail. Start with the color red. What do you notice around you that's red? And look at everything like, oh, there's a flag on that mailbox. Oh, look, there's a red flower starting to come up. This is awesome. Like there's a cardinal and it has a red belly, whatever that is. I guess cardinals are all red. Robins have red bellies, but whatever. But just noticing, and then you go through all the colors of the alphabet, all the colors of the rainbow, and it brings you back into the present moment. It gets you into a different part of your brain that is responsible for categorizing things, which is closer to the frontal lobe where all of our rational thought is. And also you're walking. So that walking is such an amazing movement because it's cross body. You're moving your opposite arm and leg together as you're walking. So it's really great for soothing our bodies, soothing our nervous system, soothing the amygdala. So you're really getting like benefits of all three. So you're getting like the brain science part of it, the coming back into the present moment part of it, and you're getting this movement and being outside in nature. So I think if people can get outside for 10, 15 minutes. We're getting to that point in the year here in Colorado where it's like the perfect temperature in the morning to go sit on my back deck and drink my morning cup of coffee or my morning cup of tea and like bundle up under a blanket and just enjoy the morning and enjoy waking up. So even just that can be so amazing, taking 5 minutes in the morning just to step outside and slow down and not immediately hop on your phone or hop on your computer, and but giving yourself time to kind of ease into the day.
So good. So simple, yet again, we need to be intentional with it, right? The breathing, the outdoors, and learning to say no. I love being outdoors. I just took my daughter, friends watching her, and who lives right next door. And I was walking outside and I was like, okay, well, after my interview, I think I'm just going to go sit outside for 10 minutes because it's so beautiful, right? And obviously, when
Yeah.
it's winter and all that, but once it gets a little warmer, I mean, it is literally like medicine to our soul. That sun,
Hmm.
that just the trees, and it just reminds you even what you're saying, like I don't know, I just think about like the trees aren't worrying about anything right now and they look healthy and they look fine. And it's just kind of like the same thing with us. It's like, what am I worrying about? What do I need to release? And how can these trees, how can nature teach me how to do that? So, so good.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, do you have just one word of encouragement or anything else you want to say around this for those listening?
Well, I just want to go back to that. It's a practice, not a perfect. Whatever you are doing in your day, if have this commitment to exercising and eating healthy and doing self-care, that's amazing. And if you skip a day, if you eat some donuts, if Netflix for 3 hours and binge on Bridgerton or whatever show you're watching right now, that's okay too. So just realizing, like, be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself. They've actually done studies where they show that if you are in a positive, kind mood when you are eating, and you're really enjoying that pint of ice cream, or maybe not a whole pint, but that bowl of ice cream or that donut, that it actually has less negative effects on your physical health than if you're stressed out over it and beating yourself up. So my biggest word of encouragement is just practicing self-love, self-acceptance for wherever you are in your journey. And the fact that you are taking those steps forward is amazing. So some days you're going to take 10 steps forward, and some days we only may take a half a step forward. And all of that is perfect. And it's exactly where you need to be.
I love it. I love it. Well, tell us a little bit more. I know you have a free gift or a couple free gifts for us and where we can find that. And then let us know where we can find you on social media and the World Wide Web.
Yeah. So I have on my website, which is just innermapproject.com. I've got a bunch of freebies on there. So a lot of different free resources that people can download, all sorts of stuff about time and building a morning practice and yoga, like all sorts of stuff on there. You can also follow me on Instagram, and my Instagram is Inner Map Project, all one word. So that's probably where I'm most active. And I also have a free Facebook group, which is also Inner Map Project. And sometimes I'll go live on there and do little meditations. I did some stuff about EFT tapping, which is a great way to release stress. I've done yoga practices on there, all sorts of stuff. So if you're interested in joining that, people can hop over there. So yeah, and then I'm always love to hear from people about what they want more of, what's helping them. So feel free to find me on Instagram, and you can always send me a DM and be like, "Oh, I really loved this meditation. Can you do more of those?" Or "I really thought this tip was helpful. I'd love more like that." So I always love hearing what my community wants to know more about.
I love it. I love it. And tell us, I forgot to ask this, tell us what MAP stands for.
Oops, I lost you for a second
Oh,
there.
sorry. Heard me now?
Yep.
Okay. I said, tell us what MAP stands for.
Oh, yes. So MAP, Inner Map Project, is my business name, and MAP stands for mindful, active, and present. And I really think about that as mindfulness being these techniques that we use to soothe our nervous system. Active, that's pretty obvious, right? And then the present is more of this kind of like self-reflection, journaling, getting present with yourself, connecting with your purpose, that sorts of thing.
Mm, I love it. I love it. I love it. Yes. Mindfulness, active, and present. Love it.
Yay.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Make sure you follow Jamie. Make sure you check out all the resources in the show notes, connect with her, and go ahead and let me know. Feel free to, wherever you're listening to this, reply or leave a comment, say what of the, which one of the tips that she talked about, breathing, saying no, or I'm just being out in nature, which one of those are you going to apply? All right. Thank you so much, Jamie.
Thank you.
What an amazing episode, learning the power of managing our stress in our lives, of slowing down our body and breathing, learning how to say no, being outdoors and practicing meditation, and a variety of things on how we can really shift our body from that fight or flight response into that rest and digest response. All right, so definitely check out all the resources that Jamie mentioned. And before you go, do not forget to join my 3-day food and body reset. This is going to be from June 7th to 9th, starting next week, where we will go through 3 days on how to really create goals that you really want to, that are meaningful and intentional, how to prepare meals, balance whole food, yummy meals throughout the summer, how to track the habits that you want to work on throughout the summer, such as stress management, then how to celebrate yourself and each progress along the way. So all you need to do is purchase my food journal and habits tracker, which is $20 off right now, and then join us live, or if you can't join us live, watch the replays into how to use the tracker and set yourself up for success this summer. Okay, so go to madewell345.com/habits tracker or the show notes, grab the food journal and habits tracker, and I will see you in the challenge. All right, talk to you soon. That's it. That's another episode of the More Than Your Weight podcast. I hope that you're leaving encouraged and inspired to continue to walk in your More Than Your Weight journey. But before you leave, I want you to know you're not alone. And I want you to really walk in that by joining my free group, the More Than Your Weight Women's Community. This is a space where you can unpack the podcast episodes, get support throughout your week. And also make sure you subscribe to my newsletter by signing up for weekly updates when podcasts come out, as well as all the other things that I'm offering in my business. And if you're not about Facebook, or even maybe you're not about email, make sure you follow me on Instagram at madewell345 to show you the behind the scenes of my life, my business, and also to support you there. Okay, I just had a blast in this episode, and I hope that these episodes have really been just encouraging you and inspiring you to know that you are more than your weight. Okay, that's it, and I'll see you on the next one.